Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and on today's First Coast Connect, a changing of the weather guard. We sit down with retiring Chief Meteorologist Tim Deegan and his replacement Lew Turner for a look at the coming hurricane season. Then, who owns childbirth? We look at how the economics of the maternity ward too often put profit and convenience ahead of the health of mother and child. And a head check from our resident spaceman on a different kind of birth story, that of the universe. Join the conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email First Coast Connect at WJCT.org or reach out.
Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Israel has started a plan to allow some limited food distribution in Gaza. For nearly 3 months, it has cut off the UN and other relief groups from distributing aid in the Palestinian enclave. This week, thousands of Palestinians gathered to try to get some of the new food aid, but the process was mired in chaos. 3 deaths were reported. Witnesses say people were shot by Israeli forces and others wounded. Israel says one of its helicopters fired warning shots to break up large crowds. NPR's Ea Batrawi says the new aid process is chaotic.
So again, unlike how the UN distributes food or used to distribute food in centers across Gaza with IDs and lists of families in need, this system had none of that. There were no screenings or lists and no clarity on who decides who gets the aid and who doesn't.
NPR's Ea Batrawi reporting. No aid is reaching northern Gaza. Several trucks intended for Gaza City yesterday were stopped. Hungry crowds took food boxes directly off the aid trucks. In the U.S., a federal judge has struck down President Trump's executive order targeting the law firm WilmerHale. This marks the 3rd time a court has permanently blocked one of Trump's executive orders punishing a big law firm. NPR's Ryan Lucas has more.
In his 73-page ruling, U.S. District Judge Richard Leon says that the cornerstone of the American justice system is an independent judiciary and an independent bar willing to tackle unpopular cases. For some 250 years, he says, no executive order had been issued challenging these fundamental rights. Until now, with President Trump's executive orders targeting several big law firms. That includes the executive order in this case, targeting the firm of WilmerHale. Now, Judge Leon has found that the order against WilmerHale is unconstitutional and has struck it down in its entirety. The order follows 2 similar rulings earlier this month from 2 other federal judges, striking down Trump's orders targeting 2 other prominent law firms. Ryan Lucas, NPR News, Washington.
The Senate is moving ahead with the massive tax cut and spending bill that was passed last week by the House of Representatives. Some critics of the bill say it does not do enough to address problems with finding child care in the U.S. NPR's Windsor Johnston has more.
The measure preserves funding for key programs like Head Start and the Child Care and Development Block Grant, but offers no new spending, despite warnings that the system is under enormous strain. Julie Cashin is a senior fellow at the Century Foundation.
Picture convenient options, no commute, no wait list. Imagine you have early educators with the resources they need to stay in the profession they love.
The Century Foundation estimates more than 70,000 child care programs could close nationwide as pandemic-era funding boosts expire. That could leave up to 3 million children without care. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
You're listening to NPR News.
You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's 9:04. Following a fire that destroyed a popular Ace Hardware store in Orange Park last week, the owners are vowing to rebuild. A spokesperson for the Hagen Ace Hardware store on Blanding Boulevard says plans for the rebuild are being worked out and will be shared at a later date. The store went up in flames last week, sending plumes of smoke into the air that could be seen for miles. Middleburg resident Sean Davis tells news partners News 4 Jax that he passes the store regularly, and it was sad to see it burn.
Ace is going to lose business, man. Like, it's really sad to see a place like this burn down. I mean, it's been here for years. It's been here since I was a child.
The fire left 33 employees at Hagen Ace Hardware without a job. The store spokesperson says the employees are not losing any pay and they're helping them relocate to other Ace Hardwares across the area. Rock musician Rick Derringer has died at the age of 77 in Ormond Beach in Florida. Derringer shot to fame at 17 when his band, the McCoys, recorded Hang On Sloopy and went on to win a Grammy Award for producing Weird Al Yankovic's debut album. His cause of death has not been disclosed. Have the umbrella for later this afternoon and for the next couple of days. Showers in the forecast later on this afternoon, mainly along the I-95 corridor between about 3 and 6 this afternoon. It'll be hot as well. Highs will reach the mid-90s inland and all the way out to the beaches. Our rain chances increase a bit tomorrow as we have the chance for strong to severe storms in the afternoon and evening hours. Highs in the upper 80s to mid-90s.
Support for NPR comes from UKG, delivering HR, pay, time, and culture products and services, dedicated to helping clients build a great workplace for their people. UKG.com/great. UKG, our purpose is people.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, veteran First Coast News weather forecaster Tim Deegan passes the meteorological torch to his colleague, Lew Turner. We preview the upcoming storm season with weathermen new and older. Later in the program, how the economic realities of childbirth exact a real-life price on the health and viability of mothers and babies. But first, a change in the weathermen. Just days before storm season kicks off, we get a joint forecast of hurricane season from the best in the business. Retiring Chief Meteorologist Tim Deegan, welcome.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, my friend, Ann.
Thank you, my friend Tim, for being here.
Yes.
And incoming Chief Meteorologist Lew Turner. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, man. Thank you very much.
Has she ever called you Lewis before? I'm used to her calling you just Lew at best.
Government name.
Yeah. But Lewis.
Very
very
formal on the air.
If I get a Lewis note at the house.
Hey, can I ask a quick question?
Go for it.
Why don't we start TV off with groovy music like they do?
I know. You're right.
I mean,
this is way groovier.
Yeah.
Hey, ask the consultants, Tim.
No, I'm not.
Don't.
You ask the consultants.
I'm going to stay out of the consultants.
I'm about ready
business.
to sit on the couch and throw things at the screen. So
you guys, it's a First Coast Connect full takeover today. So I'm just going to turn the mic over to Tim.
We never get to see each other.
I know.
We really don't.
You're different shifts.
Yes, we're different shifts. We've probably seen each other in the last 6 months more than we have in the last 16 years.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed the lessons.
I thought you were a nice guy, and really, we do get along.
I thought you were going to say, really, you're a terrible person.
No, we amazingly, that whole Salt Life thing, Lew, you should be sharing this, but I just know him. He grew up on the docks of Georgia and South Carolina, and so maybe we wouldn't necessarily be on the same surfboard or use the same rod, but that same body of water and tides and that whole bit. When we we love being with our wives.
100%.
We want to make that clear.
Absolutely.
But if they're busy.
They love it when we're busy.
We wouldn't mind following the tide. Yeah,
100%. And that's why I came to Jacksonville 15 years ago. And one of the big reasons, I grew, like Tim said, I was born in Savannah, but grew up. A good bit of my childhood was in Brunswick, right up the road, within the market. I got cousins and family there, and then in South Carolina. And Jacksonville is all of those wonderful things where you get the river, you get the beach. It's almost like a bigger macrocosm of the little town I grew up in. You know what I mean? So a lot of the same things, just a lot bigger. Beaufort.
Excuse me.
Yeah, Beaufort in North Carolina, and then Beaufort in South Carolina.
That is a forever question.
Yeah. So Beaufort is north. Beaufort is south, beautiful Beaufort. We had the French connection. We had the Huguenots, just like we had here.
So Beaufort's beautiful.
Yes.
What are you saying about Beaufort?
Beaufort's fine.
Okay.
It's like, hey, Beau. The Beau reference. It's like that. And it's a similar town too, Intracoastal Waterway.
Now, Lew, since you, not everybody knows the story in my audience, although they may well know it in your audience. But you actually had I don't know if it was a starring role in Forrest Gump, but certainly
I was a non-credited
role.
actor. And I like to say I was in an Academy Award-winning film when the Academy Awards come around. Yeah,
maybe not have It might not have made it if it wasn't for.
No.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as little people, but much smaller actors. I don't know, whatever the phrase was. But yeah, so wedding scene. Check out when Forrest and Jenny get married. I was all of 9. You can see my bowl cut back of my head.
The best
all in
times.
Buford. Yeah.
All right, I want to start with some serious stuff, even though you guys are kind of off on a lighter note.
Sorry.
Storm season, right? Starts in a couple days. And I guess we should ask you, Lew, how you feel about the fact that Tim's leaving right before it begins. I'm sure that's no accident.
Is it an accident?
Well, I mean, since Ann is here, it means we have to be factual, right?
Right.
Because she is an investigator. She is always getting closer to the truth, and I do mean in that serious way. I could spend a lot of time talking about what you've done through the decades, so thank you. But it's just how my contract went.
Yeah.
My contract truly just happened to come up every year on May 30th. And then when Rob Minnie, who was the general manager back then, said, okay, we'll just, when they decided I'm going to stay but not do the 11 anymore. So he said, everything else we'll keep the same as far as dates. And I said, sure. And, of course, then we rapidly realized, I'll be walking out just as hurricane season begins.
Yeah.
Good luck, Lew.
Thank you. And, this is not a slight to Tim at all, because he is the man. He has been fabulous, and you've learned so much. But what gives me comfort with hurricane season is the 15 or so years, the ones I've stood in. But besides me and taking me out of the equation, I've inherited an unbelievable team, Tim.
Yes.
So between Lee, Ross, and Robert, I mean, they really know their stuff. So
great variety of
it really
backgrounds.
is.
Yeah.
A wonderful a variety and people who want to work and they want to get it right. You know what I mean? And truly care.
And they're freaks about the weather, and I mean that as a compliment.
100%.
Yeah.
So these are people whose this is their passion, but their hobby. So I of course you go into every hurricane season with a just like you would opening day of baseball or anything like you're just excited. You're maybe excited it's too positive, but you're just ready. And there's a kind of that anxiousness on the edge of your seat, but prepared because you've got some awesome people with you.
Yeah, you've got awesome people.
And I can add to that, over 43 years, there is the fact that things are warmer. And even for those who don't get the significance of that, heat is a measure of potential energy. And so it's no surprise at all that over 43 years, the amount of hurricanes, the amount of intense hurricanes, the frequency of which at least hurricanes threaten our area, that has increased. The point I'm making is that we have members on that team who have had more hurricane experience in the last 5 to 10 years than I got in my first 10 to 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously a bad thing for people, but as far as you can't look at a 25 or 30-year-old on the weather team anymore and say, well, they probably haven't experienced many hurricanes. Oh, my gosh, just in the last 5 years, let alone 10 years.
Well, I mean, I go back, even a tropical storm I remember when I first got going was Beryl, and that was 2012. So I started 2010, for all intents and purposes, 2011 was really, I was getting my feet going. But 2012, I remember Beryl standing on Jacksonville Beach, and it was a tropical storm, but that was where you got your feedback. But between Matthew, Irma, Ian, Nicole, and then Helene and Milton just this past season, I mean, you start to build and you start to learn a lot with potential. And the difference, I mean, those are all different. And they're all different, but they were all extraordinarily different fingerprints and different tracks, different styles, different strengths that you have to learn from. And that applies to Ross, Robert, and Lee.
Because yes, there's the meteorology to it. But if we're doing a good job forecasting, in my opinion, you're helping people who live on Myrtle Avenue or live in Mandarin or live in Marietta or live in Waycross, and you start learning, okay, that little creek can back up and flood a home wherever, and you start learning to the neighborhood level what different storm surges and winds mean. And that's the kind of experience that I mean that is just invaluable.
I mean, and that's more important now than ever, especially with the rain events that we see. I mean, hurricane season is one thing, but some of the worst storms that we've been getting have been just intense, impactful rain events, coupled sometimes with tides and winds.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing about the First Coast. So the very lifestyle that we dig, the salt lifestyle, means that we live in a relatively flat coastal community. And so when you get 20 inches of rain or 10 inches of rain and the tide is high, the water has no place to go. And that's a significant event from Glenn County all the way down to Flagler.
And we've built in some places that, maybe Mother Nature wasn't intending and then you think about flooding. So I'm going to think about St. Augustine for a minute and had speaking to a previous city manager and a gentleman who had done a lot of mitigation for St. Augustine. They've done a great job. But, he was telling me it used to be that they could count on a Category 1 style surge event. Meaning, 3 to 4 feet of water coming into Avenida Menendez and out of the Intracoastal there about once every 5 years. But he's telling me now they're getting these events with inundation about once a year. And whether that's through tropics or through just a heavy rainfall, high tide event, so the mitigation down in St. Augustine, they're actually lifting homes, those ancient homes built in the 1800s, right there on the bayfront. They're clearing out foundations and lifting them. And to quite frankly, just run from the water. Because they have to do it somehow, and the only way to do that is to go up.
And then, of course, whether it's Jacksonville, Brunswick, in your older neighborhoods where zoning wasn't best, to put it lightly, homes were built 1, 2, 3 feet. You can go to some of those neighborhoods west of I-95 off of Trout River, and 1 or 2 or 3 feet. And same thing up in Brunswick, and some of your older neighborhoods in West St. Augustine. And so yeah, you hope we never have the big one, but these days, to your point, heavy rain and a nor'easter can cause a lot of problems.
If you're just joining us, we are talking to Lew Turner and Tim Deegan about the retirement of Tim Deegan, Lew taking over also hurricane season. If you have questions regarding the weather, climate change, or the change in the on-air lineup, join our conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. And we do have some messages coming in. Roger on Facebook saying, I hate to see Tim go, but I'm glad he's passing the weather torch to Lewis.
I appreciate that.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
Formal Lewis.
Mary
emailed Tim Deegan, always said he loved forecasting the weather, and this was clearly true. He will join the very few broadcasters I miss. And along with George Winterling, only the second weather forecaster. Thanks for your help with Marshfest at the beach, Tim.
Nice.
Wishing you fair winds and following seas. We did get an email actually yesterday as well with a question, Tim, which is, why are you retiring now? This was from from a listener named Nick. And he'd said, George Winterling, who worked into his 80s. Why now for you?
So it's a great question. I love forecasting, no doubt about it. Love the people that I work with. I just felt like, and I was even thinking about this 3 years ago, that it was time for the next generation. But also because we've chosen, myself, Donna, to live in a place that we actually like to live in. I love being outside, and TV is everybody, if you have a job, you're scheduled, right? But TV is scheduled to the second. And I'm ready. I'm just ready to not, I don't want to say too much because Lou's saying, but so I love the forecasting. I love the challenge of it. I love the challenge of combining meteorology with whatever you want to call it, the social science of trying to communicate to people. You want to get it right. But I've been in many situations, especially when I was younger, where in my head I got the forecast right, but I could tell by the way a viewer was responding, which maybe just have been a neighbor also, that I didn't communicate that to them. So it's a constant learning process. So that part is fantastic. It's just I'm ready to not have a schedule, and this is going to sound really egotistical. I'm ready to not worry about is my suit right? Am I saying the promotion the right way?
Hair length?
Is my hair okay? I'm ready to be the behind the scenes guy, if that makes any sense at all. I'll put it one other way. Somebody asked me this, not the exact same question, but somebody asked me a few months ago, how many shows have you done? And I said, well, what do you mean by show? And they said, well, let's just say like a 30-minute segment. And I'm even thinking here, with you, Ann, the red light comes on, and it doesn't matter what's going on with your life, doesn't matter what's happening with your kids or your spouse or anything else. The red light comes on, you got to do it, right? Of course, the whole red light go is another crazy part of it. But anyhow, I did some real quick math. Conservatively, I've done 40,000 shows.
Sheesh!
Wow.
And how George did it till his 80s, I have no idea. Now, without taking anything away from George, when I first started, and that wasn't until the early 80s, we basically just had a 30-minute noon show. I mean, a 30-minute morning show. Lou, how long is the morning show now?
2.5 hours now.
Yes.
Yep.
And
an hour at noon.
And an hour at noon.
And the noon show was 30 minutes. And then the 6 and 11, that was it. So taking away nothing away from George, but there was a period of time where, especially if you were the guy like George was, you did the 6 and you did 11. I think he did the noon too. Nowadays, or at least for 20, 25 years, I was doing the 5, the 5:30, the 6, the 7, and the 11. And don't get me wrong, I loved it. But 40,000 shows, it kind of
it's a good amount on the baseball card.
Up,
it kind of adds up. And so I'm ready to pull back, and if that makes any sense.
I want to take a call from Carol on the South Side. Good morning, Carol. Go ahead.
Hi. I've been in Jacksonville for almost 30 years, and during that time, we've never had a direct hit from a hurricane. So I'm just wondering if we are lucky or if there is some meteorological reason for that.
Thanks, Carol. I mean, there's always been the geographical question, too. Is there something about the coastline shape that has spared us? And then, we have to.
So do we have an hour? And then I'll throw it over to Lou. I'm going to be real quick, and then I'm sure Lou wants to throw in an angle as well. Carol, first of all, great question. But I'm glad you're asking it as in it's never going to happen. Some people do get that, and please don't feel that. So if we're going to count Dora as our last true direct hit, Matthew was terrible, Irma was terrible, but they weren't direct landfalling hits. And I'll go to like 4th and 5th grade geography, and I was told this by some anthropologists, so hopefully it's relatively close. See if this somehow makes sense. If you look around the world at where civilizations first began, first of all, it tended to be in the northern hemisphere where there's more land, but at about 30 degrees north. All kind of reasons for that. But what I've been told by anthropologists is that that's where the hunter-gatherers were able to stay in one particular place because the weather was somewhat predictable. If you think about it without getting into too much stuff, at 30 degrees north, yeah, you're going to get fronts, but the really rough polar air and jet stream stuff stays north of you. At 30 degrees north, yeah, there's going to be hurricanes and tropical stuff, but you're not quite in the trade winds. You're a little farther to the south. And you can go all the way around the earth, and that's kind of how it is, generally speaking. And that's where some of your first civilizations developed. So therefore, it doesn't mean you're not going to be hit, but that means at 30 degrees north, which for those who don't know, that's about where we are. Second part of that.
This is latitude, folks, if you're listening.
I'm sorry, latitude. Yep. Thank you, Ann. Second part of that. But how do we face? We face east. Because people might be thinking, well, what about Houston? What about New Orleans? And if you're saying really 30 to 35 degrees, what about Savannah? What about Charleston? What about all those places? What about the Florida Panhandle? What about all those places at 30 degrees that do get hit? But where do their coasts face? South. So in other words, there's a billion things a hurricane can do, but generally speaking, in the trade winds, it's going to move east to west. But occasionally, because there'll be a break in the high-pressure system, they're pulled north. And so they head north. If you talk to any engineer, any meteorologist, any climatologist, the direct hit is perpendicular. So in Jacksonville, that has to be coming from the east. But at 30 degrees north, if a hurricane's made the turn, it's going south to north, right? So then you start looking, we'll look at the places where the coast face south. Houston, Beaumont, New Orleans, Pensacola, Savannah, Charleston. So I could have just said in 5 seconds, yes, Ann, you're correct. It's geography. It helps us.
Yeah, and there's a little earth, physics to this. If the Coriolis force, if you think about something that's long tracking off the coast of Africa, eventually things get pulled to the right a little bit. What I would say, if you're thinking about direct hits to Jacksonville, and I go back to 2012 with Beryl, which was a tropical storm, but it was one that formed close to Florida. It was one that formed closer to shore. So anything that I think you have a greater potential for a more direct hit into the Jacksonville area or Southeast Georgia. Certainly exceptions will happen because of the high pressure block that could set up. But generally, if you get one of these quicker forming systems just off the coast, and these can happen, little clippers that will ultimately become tropical, that would give a greater threat, I think, for more direct landfalling because there's less time for Earth to play a part and for those pulling forces to play a part. And then you might be thinking, well, since it's close enough to shore, well, it won't be as strong. But you with the warmer sea surface temperatures, that's not the case anymore. I mean, you look at something. I mean, look at Dorian, for instance. Came at buzzsaw real quick. I mean, just last year we had a Beryl that formed and became a Category 5 essentially, or a major hurricane essentially overnight.
Michael,
right.
Yeah.
A great example of that. So the proximity to land and thinking, well, it's so close it can't strengthen and therefore won't be as big of a deal. That's really not accurate. So I'd be thinking about those ones that form close into the East Coast.
Right on. And I've had one more thing, because some people say, well, what about Dora? Because Dora did it. So if you're kind of your own personal forecaster, what Dora did was making the classic curve. And then, as Lew mentioned, a stronger blocking high developed north of Bermuda. So it can happen. But if you want to sort of be your own forecaster at home, you're more worried in the summers in which you see these blocking highs develop north of Bermuda toward like New York City, which is why if you're making this long-term look, you don't want to hear that maybe New England's going to have a hotter and drier summer than normal, because that would imply a blocking high, and then you're worried about a Dora-type scenario.
I've got a couple calls I want to get to, but I would be remiss if I didn't make you talk a little bit about what's happening in a couple of days, the start of the season, the forecast that NOAA has offered in terms of the intensity of the storm season. Can you give us a sense as to what you're watching for, what those forecasts mean, what people in this area should be predicting?
So, you get your NOAA forecast, you get your forecast from a place like Colorado State, and I mean, just year after year after year, it's always above average, or very, very above high, and that's been consistent. And I just a little behind the scenes sort of communication that Tim always has anytime the weather team has been like the last couple of weeks putting out, well, it's going to be an above average hurricane season. Tim will say, well, but let me just add,
what's average?
What is average relative to when Tim started in 1982?
Thank you, Lew.
I remember it.
And I have put that in my back pocket.
Right.
It's one of those things.
Because average
about
has
14.
Changed.
So I mean, average would be 14 named systems with 7 hurricanes, 3 major would be your average, as opposed to in the early 80s.
It was about 11. It was 5.5 and maybe 1. Intense.
Wow.
Now,
that's a big difference.
So we are looking at this above average. You're talking sea surface temperatures, of course, which we allude to all the time. You get above 80 degrees, and then you're prime. But we are a tick or two above average with sea surface temperatures, and then big global scale weather systems like a La Nina or a neutral phase, El Nino transitioning to La Nina. That has impacts. But you think about all this, and I want to temper anxiety a little bit, Tim. We talk about above average, talk about big storms, we talk about all the change, but the technology behind the forecasting has gotten so much better. I mean, just the accuracy in the last year from the Hurricane Center's forecast cone. We see that cone of uncertainty, cone of concern, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's tightening each year to where even this year, 3 to 5% more accurate and less error than in the previous year.
It's a great point. In other words, so in case people aren't hearing what I'm hearing Lew say is, we live in a good geographical area, but doesn't mean we can't be hit. But if it looks like we're going to be hit, we know so much farther in advance. So let me take you back. In 1982, there wasn't anything. We didn't even say what was our 5-day average error. There was not the attempt. It was only 3 days. And the 3-day average error back then was 400 miles in either direction. Think about that. The average 24-hour, which at the very least, that's where you're evacuating, the average 24-hour error back then in either direction was about 150 miles. Fast forward to now, your three-day forecast average is about now what the 1 day used to be.
Wow.
It's down to about 100 miles. The 7-day is much better than the 3-day used to be. In fact, it's if people remember, there was originally a 3-day cone, then a 5-day cone, then a 7-day cone. The only reason, or the major scientific reason they decided to go farther out is not because they wanted to add risk. They wanted to give people more time to prepare. And really, once they did that, it was, why are we going to go to 5-day? Because the 5-day is now as good as the 3-day used to be. Why are we going to go to a 7-day cone? Because the 7-day is now as good as the 3-day used to be. So, yeah, great
What
point.
concerns do you have about, the NOAA cutbacks? I mean, we know that that's going to impact their ability to release these weather balloons as frequently, perhaps, as they have done. Are you concerned about this storm season being impacted by some of those DOGE cuts?
Maybe I can be looser with vocabulary than Lew, since I won't be.
Please.
Okay.
I want to hear you.
All right. So, certainly personnel, right? Yes, we have our own personnel here, but it's always helpful to hear what local meteorologists from the National Weather Service are looking at. It's my opinion that from 2000, because you get to be pretty good friends with some of these people, it's my opinion that from 2000 up until recently, they've been on a super tight, undermanned position as it was.
Right.
So now that there's even less people there, that's a big concern. But let me go quickly to the weather balloon. For people out there that maybe don't even watch Lew and I, maybe they don't take the National Weather Service forecast. Maybe they've decided that there's a model that they swear by. And Lew and I know that there are some people that are like that. They'll tell us what their model is saying and take it to the bank. Maybe they're totally fine with what Siri says or the newest AI. All of that, I don't care how great the computer model, to this day, if I think it's 90%, maybe I should say just 80%, 80% of the data that goes into any model you're using comes from the weather balloons. It comes from the weather balloons. Number one, the National Weather Service is doing it. Mm-hmm. So if they're not going to do it, who's going to do it? But to your point, and it's now been tracked by the relatively conservative Wall Street Journal, that since April, the amount of weather balloon soundings in the United States, which has always had the tightest grid, the more information. Well, living in Florida, it could be sunny at the bank and pouring here at WJCT or vice versa, right? So weather balloons can miss a whole lot, and yet we have the tightest grid. And if we're not sending up as many, what did we hear when we were all first learning about computers? Garbage in, garbage out. If we don't have that data, I don't care how great your weather model is. I don't care who you watch or listen to, even if it's not the National Weather Service. It's going to be detrimental.
And they've found since April that there's been a measurable disparity?
Well, I'll leave disparity out for now, but all they did was they counted.
Okay.
They got some double verification. At the very least, and this is just the United States, there's been a 15% decrease in soundings. I mean, you talk about, at the very least, if something's out there, we have more time to prepare for it. I don't see how that's not going to hurt the long-term models.
I do want to double down.
Yeah.
So those guys, the Weather Service office in Jacksonville, they work so hard. And I will say, cuts are not, and they won't, friends, not friends, whoever over there, you ask them a question, and just for the safety of their own careers, they won't tell you anything, and that's for the best, right? What's going on in any Weather Service office, whether they've lost people or not here locally. But what I do know is these people are so heart-driven for the weather and for the safety of communities, just like we are, any local meteorologist would be and should be, that what they're doing now is just working more. Mm-hmm. So they're having to work more because they're still getting 2 soundings up a day. I still see, we're getting our weather balloons up every single day, at least in Jacksonville. It is a nested grid. It's a gridded thing. So what happens in Amarillo matters what happens in Jacksonville. But they are working so hard and making sure that no gaps are left. But ultimately, you realize that takes a toll on a human being.
Yep.
Message from Lisa on Facebook. She says, Tim is an icon and a great guy. Change is inevitable. Lewis will be terrific.
Oh.
And this feels so significant. I'll be 65 this summer, native of St. Augustine, have relied on Tim for my weather and to track hurricanes for a long time. Enjoy retirement, Tim. We'll miss you.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
and it is true. Tim, you've done yeoman's work at First Coast News, 42 years. You're going to be missed at the station.
If we're going to be accurate, 43.
43 now.
43, yeah. Here's I've heard a lot of people say 42, and probably to younger people, whether it's 42 or 43.
Well, you beat Canamaro at 43.
Is
so
that right?
That matters. Yeah, because he was at 42.
Oh, well, no, it does. Next
That's
time
a
I
big
see
win.
him.
Bragging rights.
Yeah. We've had a promo running since last year where I think Paul, our promo guy, said, Tim, tell us.
Forecasting 42 years, and that's a year old.
And because people are hearing that, I
see.
think that's what's happening.
All right, well, update it, Paul Bullock. Get on the stick, my friend.
Sheesh.
All right. Well, Lew Turner, you're going to do a fantastic job. We're so lucky to have you at First Coast News.
I'm lucky to be there. I'm blessed. I've got like I said, great team, and having to getting to work with Tim. I haven't really truly given my well wishes to Tim yet either formally. And I love you, man. You are a top dog, and it has been wonderful to learn from you. And I know it's not over now. We've got till Friday.
Well, and you know where to find me afterwards, and I love you too. And without getting into a lot of stuff, Lew and I have been living life as husbands and dads as well, and during those hurricanes, especially, we can all get tired. But I think that's also, and you know this, during a heavy news situation, we all get tired. But I think also that sometimes is at the station when we bare our souls a little more, and then you go through that. And you know each other better. So yeah, Lew, love you too. And I got your back.
I text him frequently.
Yeah.
Tim Deegan, Lewis Turner, thanks so much for coming on today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll have a safe storm season.
Amen.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Up next, the cost of cutting corners when it comes to maternal health. Welcome back. Who owns childbirth? The question is the subject of an upcoming community conversation about the economics of childbirth. And here to tell us about it is the event's featured speaker, Jenny Joseph. She's a midwife, healthcare educator, and 2002 Time Magazine Woman of the Year. Good morning, Jenny.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
It's so nice to have you here. Jenny, you've said that the system too often puts profit and convenience ahead of the health of mother and child. Can you explain how that is?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that's really clear about the United States and the way we do healthcare is it is about money, right? So right away, you have to factor that in, that most of the healthcare that you're going to receive has some relationship to capitalism and being profitable. Unfortunately, maternity is the largest health dollar spend in the United States. And so you can imagine then that there's a sort of this inbuilt incentive, if you will, to make sure that it's profitable. Well, it's not, because it's not profitable unless you do maybe surgeries. You sell menu items, epidurals, you sell all of the parts that go with birth, so that you end up adding, it's quite a bill. I mean, most people are paying maybe $30,000 for a birth, more if it's a C-section. It's really an interesting conundrum because this doesn't happen anywhere else in the world, right? In the rest of the world, midwifery is the modality for taking care of normal, healthy women, which is the majority of childbearing women. And that is a much more cost-effective model. And it makes sure that people have access to be taken care of in a physiological way, right? But what we have in the United States, unfortunately, is more of a surgical approach to birth, right? Inductions, interventions, cesarean sections, and thereby we now are in a bit of a dilemma because it's one of the most expensive things that can happen in a hospital situation, but it's also most detrimental to women's health and well-being.
So not everybody, I think, understands truly the difference between a midwife delivery and perhaps a hospital delivery.
Yes.
Sometimes they work in conjunction with each other.
Yes.
Can you sort of explain what the parameters are?
Yes, absolutely. So a midwife takes care of normal, healthy, straightforward cases. So that's during the pregnancy, labor and delivery, and in the postpartum period. Midwives are trained professionals similar to nurse practitioners, similar to mid-level providers. And so the majority of those positions in other countries are taken up by midwifery. It's the normal way to take care of birth. The difference here in the United States is that obstetricians are the main providers of maternity care. The obstetricians obviously are highly trained, expensively trained, and also expensive in the need to be reimbursed adequately, appropriately. Subsequently, when you have highly trained, skilled physicians taking care of normal when we talk about childbearing, is quite normal. It's very boring. In fact, it can be quite straightforward. Hence, people will have babies by the side of the road because once the baby's coming, it's coming, right? So this is the dilemma we have in terms of how do we manage to take care of a normal event without costing all this extra money and without using these really highly skilled, way past what is necessary for the average birthing person. That's our dilemma.
Can I ask you, do you think that there is more fear around childbirth? I mean, it
Yes.
does seem that I've talked to a number of young women who really fear the process of
Yes.
childbirth. We know that it's been done for centuries.
For millennia.
Yeah, millennia.
Mhm.
It is a natural process, but it's
Yes.
something that a lot of women I think anticipate as being incredibly difficult.
Yes.
And I wonder if that plays into, opportunities to incentivize alternatives or interventions.
Yes. Well, if you think about historically, everybody was born at home. America was delivered by midwives. As the fledgling country, America brought midwives, enslaved midwives, indigenous midwives were here, immigrant midwives, as they came into the country, delivered everybody. And so normal birth was taking place in homes. And there were some dangers, obviously, because that's obstetrics. Once we moved people into the hospital, the mid-20th century was when this took place. Obstetricians stepped in and decided that they were going to be better at delivering babies. And so we ended up with this whole idea that it is something to be feared. In essence, it was created. The fear was created. I call this industry of fear-based industry of childbirth, right? That the tools were used, the forceps, for example, the vacuum extractions, and again, the surgery, having the C-sections. People were anesthetized. People were put in stirrups. This was the taking of a normal process and turning it into a process supposedly fraught with danger. Hence, even now, we still have this sort of inbuilt fear something could happen. And we are all also seeing horrendous maternal mortality statistics in the United States. And that's it's a disgrace that a developed country, in fact, the most developed country in the entire world, has statistics that reflect some of the developing nations. We are losing mothers for childbearing in a number that has, in fact, worsened in the last 25 years. And particularly low-income women who are marginalized, and Black women and Indigenous women suffer more, 3 to 4 times as many more are dying just having a baby in the USA. So yes, fear is in the picture.
The statistics are really always shocking to read. And as you say, the U.S. has the worst maternal mortality rate when compared to other wealthy developed countries. But within that bad statistic, women of color are,
Yes.
2 to 3 times likelier to die in childbirth, to
Yes.
have adverse experiences.
Yes.
And, you've written and researched and spoken a lot on the subject of that disparity.
Yes.
How solvable is it?
Well, you see, I think what we have to really do is, first of all, recognize what is the real root cause. Because it's not about, Black women's bodies don't work, or Black women are too fat, or any of these tropes that have shown up around it. And this is really where we get to the bottom of it. It is the root cause is racism. the root cause is structural and historical ways of being that are harmful and that are in, the bias that shows up, whether it's implicit or explicit, is so baked into our systems that we are actually seeing these preventable deaths, preventable harms that could have been taken care of if we were able to consider how to have a more equitable system.
Can you give some examples of how that plays out? An example of
For example, I mean, right now we have 1 in 3 women in the United States having a cesarean section, right? That's surgical birth, 1 in 3. We've also seen that we've got people who present to a physician with concerns or complaints, and they're not listened to. And in not being heard, they are put back into, further back on the list or on the line for getting taken care of or just ignored, right? So when you have someone who presents to, say, an emergency room with a high blood pressure, if that person is of color or indigenous, they may not be treated the same way or as with the same level of interest or speed. And that's, again, because of these implicit but also structural biases that are almost baked into our systems. Right? So our insurance status, classism plays a horrible role in this as well because of our, what type of insurance do you have? And is it good insurance? Is it Medicaid? Are you uninsured? Oh my gosh, you're undocumented? All of these things play into treatment plans, care plans, and the delivery of this service when it comes to having safe, equitable maternity care.
One of the areas that you have focused on is the perinatal period.
Yes.
And you've asked that people take what you call a perinatal pause. Can you just kind of briefly explain what is that?
Well, perinatal means before, during, and after birth. So it's not just about the labor and delivery one day that happens in the maternity cycle. I'm looking at this from a holistic eye, and I'm asking people to slow down a minute because we've been talking about this I've been in this country 35 years. And that's how long we've been talking about it. First, it was infant mortality. Now it's maternal mortality. But we're just talking. The solutions are right there. What we've seen, especially in our practices, it's not about midwifery alone. It's simply about having birth and health be a human right, having respect and dignity, listening to clients, making sure they're heard, making sure they have autonomy. These are the solves because we see in our practice, and many people who work the same way that I do, full-term babies, healthy weight babies, breastfeeding mothers surviving. I've never lost a mother in my entire career. The thing that we have here is that we have an inability to see behind the structure, past the structure, and allow and support people to work differently. Everybody who's in this field loves their work. They're passionate about their work. They didn't come into this work to cause harm. But the structure has to change so that we can be able to really treat everybody with humanity, make sure that we cover not just that labor and delivery day, but throughout, before they're pregnant. Infertility is a big problem in the United States. During the pregnancy, of course, labor and delivery, but postpartum. Where's the postpartum care? A 6-week checkup does not constitute postpartum care.
Right.
Women are left bereft with horrible overwhelm, depression, stress. They're back in the workforce. We don't even have paid maternity leave. It's a systemic, a structural problem. And if we were to address that, if we were to acknowledge that, we would have this solved in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail, as they say.
It is the subject of an event tonight. You are going to be joined by Dr. Chandra Adams, who our listeners will recognize, a local OBGYN and a women's healthcare economist. But this event tonight is at HCA Florida Memorial Auditorium. It's called Birth Economics and the Maternity Crisis. Jenny Joseph, thanks for the work that you do. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it too.
All right. Up next, our resident spaceman on a different kind of birth story, that of the universe.
Life South Community Blood Centers, providing blood and patient services to the local hospitals, serving patients in this community. Donating blood with Life South helps save lives. More at lifesouth.org to find a blood drive near you. Museum of Science and History's new exhibition, Mosh Archives, the story of us and you, steps you into a treasure trove of memories, now through August 31st. Tickets and information at themosh.org.
On the next Fresh Air, how J.D. Vance rose from a struggling Ohio steel town to Yale Law School, venture capital, and now the vice presidency. Along the way, he shed old convictions and adopted new ones, some deeply divisive. We'll speak with George Packer about his Atlantic Magazine article on Vance's transformation and what it reveals about the future of American politics. Join us.
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
Some school districts are eliminating honors classes or programs for high achievers. The idea is to promote equity between students, but some say it's just limiting learning for everyone.
Like we should deny services to kids just to make them more similar? It has this icky feeling to me.
I'm Meghna Chakrabarty. The so-called detracking or de-leveling movement in schools. That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11, here on WJCT News 89.9.
It's time to prepare for hurricane season. June 1st marks its official start, and NOAA says it could be a busy one. But with the Trump administration's recent cuts to federal agencies, including FEMA, are we ready to respond when disaster hits? Hurricane season and disaster response, next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
And we're back. An upcoming show at the Museum of Science and History tackles the evidence of the Big Bang, including what some consider the theory's smoking gun. Here to get us up to speed is Eddie Whistler, director of the planetarium at the Museum of Science and History, better known as MOSH.
Hello.
Hello. How's it going?
Always fun.
Oh, it's great to have you. So we've been talking about birth, different kind of birth, but
Yes.
let's move into the birth of our universe.
And before that, you were speaking with two planetary astronomers.
Oh, yeah, there's a theme.
There is.
It wasn't intentional.
Yeah. Most people don't think about it that way, but I do.
Yeah.
If you study the Earth, you're studying. So, Deegan and his soon-to-be
Lewis.
and Lewis are planetary astronomers. They're studying weather patterns on the planet that we have the easiest access to.
Huh.
And they're doing the work that a planetary astronomer would do if they were studying some other planet. They're just doing it here.
Sure.
So how's that for like a consciousness lifter?
I like it. There are people like doing weather on Mars, right? There are people.
Of course.
That's their job.
Yeah. And many, at least in the beginning of the game, they were probably trained, as Earth scientists, then taking their skills and applying.
Earthling scientist, I think.
I love this.
All right. Big Bang.
Yes.
Tell me about it. There is some evidence out there supporting this. Is it like agreed upon science, the Big Bang?
Yeah. So this is pretty massively overwhelming evidence for, because it hasn't always been this way. There were competing theories, especially early on, about, I guess you could call them competing ideas, because a theory is a very it's a very robust idea that has much evidence supporting it. And it's kind of become that over time. One mutually buttressing amount of evidence, and then from a completely different angle, a completely different line of inquiry also supporting it, and then another massive inquiry line of evidence supporting it. And so all those different kinds and what they are,
because
is
they're
just
so different,
fascinating. Because they're so different. So just to mention them off the top, and then we can rip into any one of them that you want. Like the expansion of the universe is one that many people grasp and understand, right? Galaxies, almost every single one of them is moving away from us. And the farther away that it is, the faster it is moving away from us. So that was...
What does that suggest?
So that suggests one of two ideas, which at the time were competing. First off, the person who saw these receding galaxies for the first time wins hands down for best named astronomer. His name is Vestos Slipher.
Oh.
How is that for a name? This guy is awesome. And then Edwin Hubble famously took that work and just added to it, and kind of quantified the how fast these things are receding. So all the galaxies in the universe are racing away, except for the closest ones to us that are gravitationally attracted, like
Stuck
the
to us.
Yes. So they can, over the near gravitational feeling between the galaxies that are closest to us, overwhelm the universe expansion because of how close they are. But then all of the rest are moving away from us.
But that suggests that it's the lingering residual effects of the bang.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Or what people said at first, while being skeptical and coming up with other possibilities for that, is that new material in the universe is bubbling in and causing this expansion while maintaining a steady state to the universe. And so this was another explanation for that. So this was the steady state hypothesis. And so these were competing camps in astronomy.
But
at
the
the
latter
time.
has sort of been since debunked or discarded.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, especially with one overwhelming piece of evidence. So it was predicted by Big Bang cosmologists at the time that if you ran the clock back, things get closer together, things get more dense, temperature increases, and all kinds of weirdnesses happen. And you just crunch all that back, further, there gets to be a time where, it becomes too hot that not even individual particles can stay together, and these kinds of weirdnesses. So they said, well, if that's expanding, then there becomes a time when atoms essentially solidify and condense and come together, and that would release photons, that would release light at a very particular frequency. And so we should see this light everywhere, says the math and says the people working. And they say, oh, how are we going to find that? And they're like, we have no idea. We're never going to find this. We don't have sensitive enough instruments. Lo and behold, a couple decades later, we find this on accident in every direction that we look, right in the predicted frequency.
The light?
Yes. And we call that now the cosmic microwave background radiation.
I see.
So we predicted it and found it sometime later on accident. And, it's things like that happen in order to just help us understand that something like this model is definitely what happened.
This event, Planetarium Night Live, it's called Big Bang, Nuff Said.
Enough said.
On the
You
20th.
know what it's about.
It is June 20th, so a little time to study up on that beforehand.
Yeah, no need to study. Just come. We'll do it together.
Right.
And we'll do it under a 60-foot dome.
Excellent. Eddie Whistler, thanks so much for being here. We love seeing you.
Boom.
We'll see you next month. All right. Join us tomorrow. We're going to be discussing a new research.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Museum of Science and History's new exhibition, Mosh Archives, The Story of Us and You, steps you into a treasure trove of memories, now through August 31st. Tickets and information at themosh.org.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Hurricane season officially starts in just a few days. How ready are you? And how ready are the states most likely to get hit? From WAMU and NPR in Washington, this is 1A. Hi, I'm Jen White. NOAA says this could be a bad year for hurricanes, but But President Trump is slashing federal funding for disaster preparation and recovery, leaving states unsure whether the federal government will be there in their time of need. Cuts to FEMA are already hitting home in the aftermath of deadly tornadoes earlier this month.
Our city cannot shoulder this alone. The state of Missouri cannot shoulder this alone.
Today, what to expect and how are states preparing? Share what you know. Email us at 1a@wamu.org or talk to us using our app, 1A Vox Pop.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Korva Coleman. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in Berlin today. He's talking with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz about ways to bring an end to Russia's war in his country. Esme Nicholson reports Ukraine is looking for increased support as Russia's bombing campaign intensifies.
Speaking to journalists after a one-on-one meeting with his Ukrainian counterpart, Friedrich Merz said Germany and Ukraine have agreed to start the joint production of long-range missiles. Merz said cooperation on an industrial level will take place both in Ukraine and in Germany. The German leader raised hopes earlier this week that he would green-light the delivery of Taurus missiles to Ukraine, but stressed in the press conference with Zelensky that such decisions will not be discussed in public. Merz did promise to continue and expand Germany's military support for Ukraine. For NPR News, I'm Esme Nicholson in Berlin.
The federal government will no longer recommend that healthy pregnant women or healthy children get routinely vaccinated against COVID-19. Federal health officials have not explained why they changed the recommendation from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. NPR has learned it appears the decision was made without consulting independent advisors to the CDC. NPR's Rob Stein says it's not clear how easily people who want COVID shots can pay for them.
One big question is, will insurance companies still pay for the shots, and will people be able to afford it if they don't? Because if the